morning to you. Was it? It's afternoon, 1 o'clock right now, um, standard time. Welcome to the Chai Academy. Welcome to the Chai Center. And my name is Rabbi Sachs. And thank you for joining us for this half-hour class. We have been talking about Genesis. So, Genesis chapter 1, we went through creation, 9, 10 classes or so. Hi, Eileen. And now we're holding the second class of chapter 2. Each class is self-encapsulated, and you can listen to one class without having prior knowledge of the day before, of the class before, I should say. So we have been discussing Adam. So remember, chapter 1, it was just God gave us an overview of the creation of the world and the creation of mankind, the human being. We discussed it's not male, not female. It's a little bit of both. Hermaphrodite, androgynous. It's and men and women are equal. We discussed that, and it will come into play actually, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Now, yesterday, the tail end of chapter 2. Chapter 2, we discussed actually man, that God formed man. He made man, made him flexible, made him be able to adapt, to survive, made him be able to go through a lot of good things and bad things and still come out at the end okay, unscathed, a little messed up. So we discussed that. And God brought him from outside the Garden of Eden, where it was thorny and thistles and bleak, and it looked like the Badlands, or it looked like, what Simba saw, the elephant graveyard, into the Garden of Eden, which is amazing, lush and beautiful, physically, spiritually, etc., etc. But just parenthetically, it's the Garden of Eden, which means it surrounded Eden. So the Garden of Eden is not Eden. It's the garden. You have the Taj Mahal, and you have the Taj Mahal Gardens, the Garden of Eden and Eden. So obviously in that garden there was Eden. We'll have to get to that at some point. So he brought him into the Garden of Eden, and he showed him beauty, and he said, don't mess this up. Right? And as we spoke yesterday, that mankind, human being, has the ability to take a good thing and not appreciate it enough. That's kind of what happened with Adam. I mean, we'll talk about it, but he was in a beautiful place. Can you imagine? You were given rent-free in Bali, in one of those tents or huts right on the water, with room service every day. 3 meals, 4 courses each, glak kosher in the middle of Bali. And you offend somebody and get kicked out. I mean, that's kind of what happened to Adam. So we have to learn to appreciate. We have to learn to appreciate what we have. So God brought him into, right? And God told him that this is yours, la'avda, to work it, u'lashamra, and to guard it. It's a great discussion as to what that means. A couple of different thoughts. What does it mean? What was man's responsibility in the Garden of Eden? What is our responsibility now to the garden of the world? What is it? Right? What is it? So it's true, by the way, Eileen, he said he didn't really know better. That's true, but we'll get to that. So what does Avdul Shamra mean? So there's many different commentaries, and I think each one has a valid point. We'll discuss a couple. So one is, it's our job to protect the planet. Clear and simple. It's not okay for us to throw pollutants in the water, to have the factories take their waste, whether it's nuclear waste or non-nuclear waste, or, from factories, whatever they're making, and just let it go into the rivers. It's not okay. Just let it go into the waters. It's not okay. It's not okay for us to if we're going to have nuclear power, to make sure that to be lax. And look what happened in Chernobyl. It's not okay. That's horrific. It's not okay. It's not accidents happen. You're playing with fire. You got to be careful, right? Um, and likewise, it's not okay to overfish. It's not okay to overhunt. It's not okay to ruin God's creation. God put in man la'avda, to serve it, or l'shamra, and to guard it. So shamra we get to guard it. As we said, we have to really cherish this world, and we have to if the cure is worse than the problem, then it's an issue. So if the pesticides are killing the earth and causing cancer, then those are not pesticides that should be used. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. Come up with some other stuff. La'avda, according to some commentaries, is really he had to work it. He had to work it. He had to prune. I mean, it wasn't it wasn't overbearing, because God caused this Garden of Eden to be beautiful and lush on its own. But still, he had to work a little bit. Most commentaries disagree, by the way. Most commentaries say, no, he didn't have to work anything. This is the Garden of Eden, man. This is where you're in a 5-star glatt kosher hotel, middle of the desert. You don't have to do a darn thing. So what does la'avda mean? So there's a commentary that says that man's job is to be spiritual. Just like we studied in yesterday's class, the prior class, that rain didn't happen until man prayed for it. Likewise, man's work is to recognize godliness. Recognize God, and then blessings will flow. Pray for rain. Pray for financial success. Man's job is not, you're not obligated to work 14 hours a day, right? And then not have time for prayer or not have time. Part of your job is to reach out to God, to ask God for help. I always say this, right? You can have 2 attorneys, both on Jericho Turnpike, both, personal injury attorneys. The term ambulance chasers doesn't appeal to me, but both personal injury attorneys. One does very well, and one doesn't. And they're in the same building, and one doesn't, right? What is that? The shingle? Or is it one is blessed, one is not as blessed? The one that's not as blessed is probably still more blessed than another guy, perhaps down the block, who has no business. And he still is blessed compared to the attorney, the agricultural attorney in the famine-ravaged land in Africa. So part of our job is to bring God into the equation. That's what it means. La'avda. We got to work. We got to work at it. So it's that's a man's job. You have to have a spiritual quest as well. You can't only be just strictly, it's all working. The Garden of Eden, according to many opinions, they didn't have to work it, but they had to pray. They didn't have to work it, but they had to recognize that there's a God working it. Right? That was their job. So it leads me into a discussion, right, about the feud that's going on in Israel, with the Orthodox not going to the army, and the Orthodox, dodging the army, and it's getting people upset. And how could you dodge the army? And how could you do this? And how could you do that? So the Orthodox say, no, we never signed up to go to the army. We don't want to go to the army. And the army says, hold on, if you're not going to protect us, then who? If not now, when? So there is, I think, a very common sense approach, and this is touted by many. It's not my approach, but it resonates with me. Is that in in Israel, and truth be any, but let's talk about Israel. In Israel, you need soldiers in the army. You need those that know how to lob a grenade. You need those that know how to intelligence, how to shoot a gun, clean a gun, fire a gun, a cannon, a tank, an F-17 and fly this and a bomber and a helicopter and a Chinook, etc., etc. You need it. You absolutely need it. But you also need the prayers, the daveners, the studiers. You also need that. Right? That's a part and parcel of who we are. That's part and parcel of what Adam had to do. Was la'avda or l'shamra. He had to do both. Serve God and also protect the land. In Israel, you need both. You need those to protect the land, and you need those to serve God. Avda, by the way, means to serve God. Right? Oved means somebody who's serving God. So the fairest thing should be is that yes, there should be people in Israel, top 10%, top 20% of the yeshivas, top 20% of those who actually they're enlisted in the army, but their job is to study and pray, and their job is to really be the scholars, and not fight and not go, because it would be a waste of talent. Then again, if you take a soldier that's strong, tough, and put him in a chair to study, it doesn't make sense. So there should be some, not the way it is now, I believe, where everybody and nobody wants to serve in the army. It's not true of Chabad, by the way. Chabad send they're a lot more Orthodox send the kids to the army now. Chabad has always been okay to send the kids to the army, but we're talking about other Orthodox. There should be a patur, an exemption. Yes, you are a top scholar. You 100 out of the 1,000 don't have to go to the army. Your job is to protect us spiritually. You rest. Your job is to join the army, and that means civic duties as well. That means civil duties as well. And because it says clearly in the Torah, la'avda or l'shamra, serve it and protect it. It's true in the United States. It would be true anywhere. By the way, you don't have to tell the Taliban this little trick. So moving on. Of course, they should all know how to defend. There's different ways of defending. Some defend with their prayers. Can't knock it. It's been around. Prayers have been around. Moses prayed. Adam prayed. Noah prayed. Abraham, Sarah, right? They all prayed. You can't knock it. So then the Torah tells us that that you, Adam, this is before Chava, before Eve came into the picture. The Torah tells us that you can eat from any tree in the garden. However, you should not eat from the tree of knowledge. You can't eat from the tree of knowledge. Now, clearly there was one specific tree, right, that God said you can't eat of the fruit of that tree of knowledge. Now, there's a discussion, what is it about the tree of knowledge? What's this mystery behind this tree, right? What is it? So there's the commentaries explain, and this is also explained in Kabbalistic books, scholars, is that Adam, and after Eve came to the forefront, Eve as well, Chava as well, they knew that there was this concept called evil. They were adults, by the way. When they were made as adults. I think it tells us in the Talmud they were like 20 years old. Right? They knew the concept of evil. However, it was in the abstract. They knew it. They had no cravings for evil. They had no lusts. They weren't greedy. They weren't selfish. They may have understood there was something called bad, but it really wasn't part of them. Right? They basically, evil was external. Right now, evil, we have a choice inside of us. We have very, very clear that certain things are evil and certain things are good. Not always can we differentiate between them, by the way. Certain things seem good, they're not really good, and certain things seem evil, they're not really evil. Right? Right? So they knew it in the abstract. They knew it in the abstract. This tree, the fruit of this tree was an admixture of good and bad. It had both. And God said, you know what? I much rather them be pure and not internalize that there's evil. Even though when they eat from this fruit, they could have a little bit of good as well as evil, but I'd rather them just be as pure as a driven snow. It's almost like, when we have a kid, and this child is born, he or she is not born a bigot or a racist, is not born selfish, not born greedy, right? It doesn't, it's hungry, it's going to cry, and if it sees a toy, it wants a toy, but you can't call it, the child is selfish. The child is being a child. It's pure. It's only when it gets older does it say, oh, I hate this one, and I hate that one, and so gets on my nerves, and so-and-so's rotten, and right? So Adam and Eve were like a child. And God said, I don't want you to grow up so fast. I want you to remain pure as long as you can. Don't eat from the tree, because you are going to grow up really quickly. And you're going to experience negativity. You're going to experience, all of a sudden, a craving for this, that, and the other. Right? And so therefore, they were told not to eat it. Not to eat it. Now, interesting to note, there are commentaries that teach us, and this fits in well with the child, allegory. There are commentaries that tell us that this command not to eat it wasn't a long-term command. Don't eat it for now. Friday, wait till Shabbat, then you can eat it. Or wait till next week and you can eat it. Live 24 hours before you eat it. Right now, you're too, you don't give honey to a baby. It's too raw and too, physically. Here, it's not good for you spiritually. Not yet. You need to mature a little bit. Right? Enjoy life. Enjoy. Right? We always tell the kids when they want to know this, that, and the other, okay, now is the time for you to be a kid. Now is the time for you not to worry about it. Like an 8-year-old saying, I don't know what am I going to do for a living. I don't want to be a lawyer like Dad. I don't want to be a nurse like Mom. I don't want to be a doctor like Mom. Whatever it may be. What do you tell the child? Stop it. There's plenty of time for it. Be a kid. Play with your cars. Play with your dolls. Play with your cars and dolls. Right? Now's not the time. Now's not the time when you're 8 years old to worry who you're going to marry. Now's not the time to worry about your sexual orientation. You're 8 years old, for crying out loud. Right? Now's not the time. Just not. That's essentially the message that God was trying to convey to Adam. Don't eat from this tree of knowledge. You're too young. You're too inexperienced. You're too pure. Right? You haven't lived. Live life before you start understanding that there's another whole side to this. I just thought of this now. When I was, I think I was 12 or 13 years old. So a classmate came over to me and said, do you know how the birds and the bees? So I said, well, in fact, I do. I do know the birds and the bees. So he goes, I want you to know that what you think you know is not true. What happens is as follows. He says, a man and woman get married. Once they get married, God gives a blessing and they have a child. Right? And he was probably about 12 years old or something. Right? And and I said, you know what you're talking about. It's nonsense. It happens differently, whatever. The point is, he was so pure. So, 12. He was naive and pure. And you know what? God bless him. It was better that way. It is better that way. If there are any questions, you can ask, because we're about to go on to the next part. The Torah tells us that it was not good for man to be alone. Therefore, I'm going to make him Chava. I'm going to get him right, so he's not lonely. So, lo tov, it's not good for a person to be alone. So, it's interesting. Adam technically wasn't alone. I mean, he was, he had God, by the way, and there was angels talking to him, and there was, he had the animals, and he had, the lions and tigers and bears, and but he didn't have a peer. He didn't have someone who really understood him. So even though he wasn't alone, he was alone. And I was thinking about it because I once went to a baseball game, and I went to see the Mets lose, I guess, and I went myself. I had a ticket. It was a great ticket. I only had one ticket. I went, and I didn't think necessarily about it then, right? I was in Payson's seat, so that's how good of a seat I had. Couldn't give that up. Haven't got that since. So, in the stadium, there were 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 people. But I was alone. So alone, it doesn't mean alone that you're in a house all alone, or you're in your domicile, whatever that is, and you're alone, hotel room alone, right? No, it means without peer. I went to this game without peer, and therefore I was alone, right? It would have been way more enjoyable if I had a peer, or someone I would go with, a peer, a colleague, or this, that, the other, but it wasn't meant to be. So God, so even though Adam, right, was, and he didn't know better, but it was not good for him to be alone, right? So one of the worst, I read this recently in a book. It's a book of psychology, and it says one of the worst punishments you can give a human being is solitary confinement. It is the worst type of punishment you can give, right? Because it's not designed that way. Clearly from the Bible, it's not designed that way. So it's no good for man to be alone. No, we all need somebody in our life. Nobody should be alone. So and I tell this to families where, let's say, the husband lost the wife or the wife lost the husband, and the kids are in their 20s, and maybe one kid is 18, and they resent the fact that their parent, it's a year later and their parent has started to date, and they resent it, and it creates havoc. And they start out with the new woman or the new man in the person's life, and I tell them, no, you're wrong. I tell them, lo tov hayos adam levado. It's not good for man to be alone. It's not fair. God created us a certain way, and that's how we gotta be. We should not be alone. You gotta have somebody. Chaim Hamagel, right? The Jewish Rip Van Winkle. He had a line. It says in the Talmud. So when he woke up from his slumber, and he slept many years, in the Talmud this is, right? There should be the Chaim Hamagel Bridge up in Albany. So he looked around and he didn't recognize anybody, and there was none of his peers were around anymore, right? So he turns to God and he says, Oy chavrusa, oy misusa. Give me friends or give me death. Like say, give me liberty, give me death. He said, give me friends, oy chavrusa, or friends, colleagues, peers, oy misusa, or death. I don't want to live if if I'm going to be lonely. That's a fascinating and very true commentary. There's another commentary that's equally as true. Lo tov ha'yos adam levado. It's not good for man to be self-sufficient. Right? You at that time, remember, Adam and Eve were in one body. Right? He was an hermaphrodite. He had both sexes. Sure, he had both attributes. He had testosterone and estrogen flowing. He had, he was everything. He was everything. He had prostate trouble and PMS at the same time. All right, it was just right. So he was self-sufficient. In the Talmud, it says that Adam and his and Eve that were connected could actually reproduce themselves. Right? So they and God said, you know what? This is not good. This is not good for a person, for a human being, not to need someone else. It's going to grow up to be a very selfish human being. Very selfish human being. So as it was, they didn't need anybody. They could do everything. Know everything. Even have kids. Their own, by themselves. Right? Whatever that means. It conjures up an image, but I have no idea what it means. But I said, God said, no. It's you can't have one person be a kol yachol. You can't have one person be good at everything. Therefore, I'm going to spread the wealth. I am going to give this person this talent, this person that talent, this person strength, this person intellect, this person brawn, this person brains, right? This person this person that. Because if one person has everything, they're going to become a very, very arrogant individual, and in the end think they're God, right? And delude themselves that they are it, and therefore everybody else is dispensable and disposable, and so God said, no, it's no good for man to be self-sufficient. I'm going to do something about it. So that I believe is a powerful lesson, is that we have to recognize that we were each created with a unique mission. The unique mission, however, is not for us to complete alone. We have to collaborate with others. If our mission, and most of us have this mission, I believe, is to have kids, can't do it alone. You're going to have to collaborate with somebody. Right? Our mission is to be good and kind. Can you imagine that and good and kind 24 hours, but I can't. I gotta work, I gotta eat, gotta sleep. So therefore, there's organizations you hook up with. There are people that rely on you, that you go to work and they do the kind. They rely on you for donations. Their mission is to help. Your mission is to help them. You can't be self-sufficient. You can't do everything. You can't be an MD, JD, CPA, and a nurse, and a contractor, right, and an accountant, and a therapist. You can't. It takes a village. So that's why God said, I gotta do something about it. I have to make the human being not to be self-sufficient, and not have their own kids, but rather have to love somebody to have kids. What does love mean? give of yourself. Not only sexually. Give of yourself to somebody else. And that somebody gives up something for you. Now you're no longer alone. Now there's a partnership. This concludes today's session. If you have any questions, you can ask here on Facebook Live. I will see it. Or rabbi@thechaicenter.com. If you wish to see a copy of this class, or any other class for that matter, it's thechaicenter.com. The Chai Center, THECHAI center.com/academy. And if you be so kind as to tell other people about this, and share it if you will, right? The more people we teach, the better it is. It's my job, right? I rely on others to help me do my job. That's exactly what I was saying. And the more people who get Torah, Jews, non-Jews, the better. Morals, values, never hurt anybody. God bless. Thank you, Eileen. Be well.